Part 42. Adorable Baby, The Miracle Doctor is So Awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 411. As the youngest son of the Min family, one of the three major aristocratic families in Yufukan, Min Tianyu has always wanted the stars but not the moon since he was a child. He has developed an unscrupulous and self-centered character. His favorite thing to do is to lead a bunch of thugs on the streets. Search for beauties. He would not reject anyone from a 7 or 8-year-old girl, to a handsome young man, to a 30-year-old mature woman. Moreover, both meat and vegetables are not taboo, and both men and women eat it. I don't know how many people were ruined by him. The first time Shen Yizi entered Yufukan, he was attracted by Min Tianyu. Unfortunately, this time he was hit hard. In the end, not only did the beauty fail to eat, but he almost became a eunuch. From then on, whenever she went to Yufukan and saw Min Tianyu bullying men and women, she would give him a lesson. After 2 or 3 attempts, Min Tianyu became afraid. Wept bitterly to Shen Yizi and swore to the sky that he would never rob a good woman, man, again. Shen Yizi reluctantly spared his life. Min Tianyu has indeed become more honest. But nature is hard to change, and Shen Yizi did not appear again for 4 years. Min Tianyu healed his scar and forgot about the pain, and his restless heart gradually became turbulent again. This time he entered the secret realm, and when he saw Kuiyu's watery and delicate appearance, he immediately felt itchy and unbearable. Thinking of catching her acting out her animalistic desires. Who would have expected that he would meet the devil Shen Yizi again? You guys cut off my queen, Min Tianyu yelled at his 2 men, took out a small wooden figurine from his arms and threw it to the ground. The wooden figurine grew as soon as it hit the ground. In the blink of an eye, it grew to the size of a normal human. He picked up Min Tianyu and turned around. Just run. The wooden man is a low-level puppet with no intelligence, but his speed is very slow and he can disappear in the blink of an eye. Kuiyu became anxious upon seeing her. Sisters Hizi, let's catch up quickly. Shen Yizi held her hand and said, don't worry, he can't run away. Let's deal with these 2 guys who are helping others to do evil first. The 2 men who were still kneeling trembled when they heard this. The strong desire to survive forces them to show their value crazily. Fairy, I can hunt monsters for you and transfer all the contribution points I get to you, please spare my life. Fairy, I can do it too. I know a place with a lot of monsters and beasts, which is the best place to save contribution points. In this regard, Shen Yizi did not express an opinion, but looked at Kuiyu. How do you want to deal with them? Knowing that Kuiyu was the one who could decide their life or death, the 2 of them hurriedly kowtowed to her and begged for mercy. Their sincere attitude and touching words really made those who saw her cry. Kuiyu couldn't help but feel soft for a moment. However, when she thought of the boundless fear in her heart when the 2 men held her captive so that Min Tianyu could despise her, Kuiyu's softened heart hardened again. Humph, what's the use of begging for mercy now? I begged you to let go before. Me, did you listen? If Sisters Hizi had not come, she might have been in a different situation. So she would never let these 2 people go easily. And Min Tianyu, he is the culprit. However, she had no idea how to deal with the 2 of them. Just kill him, Shen Yizi said calmly. Kuiyu's heart tightened. She had never thought about killing someone. She shook her head subconsciously. When the 2 people on the ground saw this, their hearts that had been lifted up suddenly dropped. It would be better if they didn't die. They don't ask for anything else, as long as they can survive. Only when you are alive can you have hope, but when you die, it is all over. However, they soon learned that there are many things in this world that are more terrifying than death. How about abolishing their cultivation? If they have never embarked on the path of cultivating immortals, then that's it. After having it and then losing it, it must be very painful, Shen Yizi said leisurely. It seems that being a disabled person is just a trivial matter for her. However, to the ears of the two people on the ground, it was nothing more than bad news. Thinking of the consequences of losing their cultivation, the two of them felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, and looked at Kuiyu hopefully. And Kuiyu did not disappoint them. But it was not because she couldn't bear it, but because she thought about what they had said before, that they could help fight monsters to gain contribution points. If their cultivation was ruined, wouldn't they be useless? So the cultivation level must be reserved for them. If you don't want their lives, and don't waste their cultivation, then I want their lives to be worse than death, Kuiyu said firmly. Life is worse than death. For men, there is probably nothing inhumane that makes them worse than death. Shenyazi suddenly had an idea. He leaned close to Kuiyu and whispered a few words to her, then handed her 2 pills. This is a good idea. Kuiyu excitedly took the pill and came to the 2 people kneeling on the ground. Open your mouth. The 2 of them looked at each other and saw fear in each other's eyes, but they did not dare not listen. At the moment, I am a man of flesh and blood and a swordsman, and their lives depend on someone else's thoughts. How dare I disobey? So the 2 of them had no choice but to open their mouths, no matter how reluctant they were. Kuiyu popped 2 pills into their mouths respectively, watching the pills slide down their throats, with a big bright smile. However, in the eyes of these 2 people, this smile looked like a devil. Kuiyu clapped her hands. Do you know what I gave you to eat? They both shook their heads in unison. This is a purification pill. After taking this pill, you will become eunuchs and will no longer be able to harm women. The 2 of them were shocked. This was worse than killing them. Really, life is worse than death. Seeing the pain on their faces, Kuiyu was extremely happy. Sure enough, happiness is based on the suffering of others. After taking care of the 2 thugs who were working for the tiger, it was time to find Min Tianyuo, the real owner. Shenyazi mentioned the 2 of them, took Kuiyu on the sky boat, and chased Min Tianyuo in the direction of his escape. On the boat, Shenyazi said to the 2 of them, from now on, you will be called Jiada and you will be called Jia. Follow Yu well and help her get contribution points. If you do well, maybe I will give you the antidote. Go ahead. Not good, het. This ha is very essence, condensing all her unfinished threats into it. Jia de Jia hurriedly bent down and raised his hands to express his loyalty. Fairy, don't worry, we will do our best from now on and swear loyalty to the death. But as for Min Tianyuo, he was carried on the shoulders of a wooden man and bumped all the way, and soon he couldn't bear it anymore. Bye. The wooden man braked mechanically and directly threw Min Tianyuo out. He rolled on the ground several times until he hit a big tree and stopped. Ouch, my old waist. He rubbed his chest with one hand and his waist with the other, and sat up from the ground with difficulty. After a while, he stood up holding onto the tree trunk and looked back in fear. Seeing that Shenyazi didn't catch up, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it seems that the 2 men are very good this time. Go back and add chicken legs to them. Min Tianyuo closed his eyes and sat down against the tree trunk. However, he soon realized something was wrong. When he looked up, he saw, oh my god, what a big python. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 412. Min Tianyuo was so frightened that 1 soul ascended to heaven and 2 souls left his body. He wanted to run, but found that his legs were so weak that he couldn't use any strength at all. Help me! He shouted to Muren with a trembling voice. However, this sound attracted the python's attention even more. It spiraled down from the branch at an extremely fast speed and came to him. A fishy wind blew in his face and made him choke. A huge head hung in front of him, and the scarlet snake hissed, almost touching his face. Min Tianyuo rolled his eyes in fright, tilted his head and fainted. Seeing that he was about to die, the wooden man knocked the python's head away with his fist. The python roared, wrapped around the wooden man, and gave it a bite so hard that it almost broke its teeth. Just as the puppet and the python were fighting, Shen Yizi and his entourage arrived. Asterisk. At the junction of the inner and outer circles of the secret, a large river hundreds of meters wide runs across it. The river is clear and calm, like a huge mirror, clearly reflecting the blue sky and white clouds. There was a man standing on the bank, holding a fan in his hand. He used the fan as a shelter and looked at the river. "I'm afraid this is the Shenyu River," that master said. "Shenyu, Shenyu, even if the birds fly over the river, they will sink. This man is Xiaoben. He has been here for a few hours and has been observing the river, but he has never seen a bird flying over the river. Forget about birds, he didn't see any living creatures." The river was also calm. Master said that the Shenyu River is a forbidden area of its own. In this forbidden area, everything will be suppressed. Once it enters, the body will become extremely heavy, as if there is a very strong force pulling it from underneath. You too. No matter how powerful your spells are or whether you have a flying magic weapon, you can't get through it safely. The only way to cross the river is by boat. However, the wood for shipbuilding must be extremely rare construction wood. The wood is extremely strong, yet extremely light and can float on water. Moreover, the building wood will emit a smell that is disgusting to the sharks in the river, so stay away from it. Shark is a unique fish in the Chennai River. It likes to spit sand at the shadow. Once the shadow is hit by the sand, the shadow owner will also fall into the river. The word innuendo comes from this. The sand in this word refers to the sand spit out by sharks. I don't know how master is doing right now. Have you crossed the Chennai River? Xiaoben looked at the vast river, thought for a while, then turned around and left to look for Jianmuo. The master he was thinking about in his heart was now pushed to the edge of the cliff by a group of golden-eyed beasts. The golden-eyed beast looks like a tiger, but is 2 or 3 times the size of an ordinary tiger. It has a pair of majestic golden eyes that make people feel more stressed when staring at them. Zhang Yuchun looked at the 5, 6, or 78 golden-eyed beasts that were surrounding them, and once again lamented his own stupidity. She just saw how cute the golden-eyed beast cub was, so she wanted to steal it and play with it, and then quietly put it back when she had enough fun. The result can be imagined. She suddenly poked a hornet's nest and recruited all the members of the golden-eyed beast family. Everyone has something to say, please don't use force. Zhang Yuchun raised his hand and pressed down, trying to calm down the golden crystal beasts with their fangs exposed. At this moment, a furry little head came out of the clothes on her chest and let out a tender roar. Going to suffer. Zhang Yuchun was too late to push the little beast back at this time, so he simply walked all the way to the dark, took out the little beast, and hung it above the cliff by the back of its neck. Seeing this, the golden-eyed beasts were all angry, but they did not dare to act rashly and could only stare at Zhang Yuchun. This human being. You all stand back and keep backing, or I will throw it down. Zhang Yuchun's export threat. The beasts retreated slowly, but their eyes never left her half an inch away. They wanted to tear her into pieces. To be honest, Zhang Yuchun was not afraid at all. It's a pity that it was a little beast that was stolen with great difficulty. It's so cute with its tiger head and tiger brain. After the beasts retreated a certain distance, Zhang Yuchun threw the small beast in his hand towards them, turned around and jumped off the cliff. The leader of the golden-eyed beast jumped up, so fast that it left after images. When the little beast was about to land, it accurately caught it in its mouth. Other golden-eyed beasts gathered around and licked the little beast wildly, expressing their joy after the disaster. Father beast, who caught the little beast, handed it to mother beast, walked to the edge of the cliff, and looked up to the sky and howled loudly. The roar penetrated the clouds and the moon, arousing echoes in the mountains. Asterisk. Pa, Mentianyu was slapped awake. This slap came from Kuiyu. She rubbed her palms. This guy was so shameless that it hurt her hands. Mentianyu opened his eyes and faced a huge snake head. He was so frightened that he jumped up with an ah sound and ran wildly. After running a few steps, a burst of laughter suddenly came from behind him, and he felt something was wrong. He turned around bravely and saw Shen Yizi and the others. Kuiyu pointed at him and laughed so hard that his two men were standing behind them honestly. Beside him, the big python lay motionless on the ground. When he looked again, he saw that the python turned into little bits of light and disappeared in place. Apparently dead. So they were trying to scare him just now? Mentianyu was very angry, and his heart was still beating wildly. Fortunately, they were still watching his jokes. But he dared not speak out when he was angry. Come here, Shen Yizi waved to him. Mentianyu wavered back and forth between the two options of continuing to escape and staying and being tortured. In the end he chose the latter. Because he found that his wooden puppet had fallen apart and was lying on the ground in pieces. Without the puppet, he would just run away and he would definitely be caught in the end, so he might as well not run in the first place. Having made up his mind, Mentianyu walked over with a shy smile. Miss Shen, what are your orders? Shen Yizi held a pill between his fingertips. Here, take it. Here, what is this? Mentianyu took the pills and looked at the two people behind her, hoping to get some hints from them. However, Jia de Jia Er has now become Kuiyu's man. How can he remind his former master? Besides, isn't it because of Mentianyu that they are in this situation now? They wished they could see him take this medicine and experience their pain. When the pain is passed on to others, the pain seems to be alleviated a lot. As the saying goes, if I'm unlucky, you can't even think about it. Under Shen Yizi's gaze, Mentianyu swallowed the pill with difficulty. At this time, Kuiyu kindly gave him some popular science. The thing you took is called a purification pill. After taking it, you will be like the who was purified in the palace. From now on, you will have no desires or desires. How wonderful it is to be pure and devoid of desires, don't you think? Hearing this, Mentianyu felt as if he had been struck by lightning. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 413. I'm going to relieve myself. After regaining his consciousness, Mentianyu immediately wanted to verify whether what Kuiyu said was true. Before Shen Yizi could open his mouth, he ran deep into the forest. About a quarter of an hour later, he came back dejected and dejected. Hand drooped, the whole body was filled with the aura of hopelessness. On the contrary, Kuiyu was very happy to see him like that and even hummed a little tune. Humph, you deserve it. Mentianyu slowly raised his head and looked at her with scarlet eyes. Kuiyu was shocked when she saw him. What do you want to do? She looked like she was going to kill someone. But then I thought about it, he was just a scumbag in front of Sisters Hizzy. Even if he was dissatisfied, what kind of trouble could he make? She relaxed and folded her arms, taking time to admire his expression. Even eagerly expecting him to rush forward without overestimating his own strength. When the time comes when Sisters Hizzy kicks her away, the scene will surely be exciting. It was a pity that Mentianyu had the heart but not the courage. He stared at Shen Yizi for a long time with red eyes. Finally, he knelt down with a pop and burst into tears. His tears flowed down his face. Miss Shen, Shen Daxian, Shen Ancestor, I beg you come on, give me the antidote. I have 18 beautiful concubines waiting for me to go back and favor me. I can't become a eunuch. Shen Yizi snorted secretly. Return to me as a concubine in the 18th room. He has not changed his nature, and no one knows how much of it was taken by him. You want the antidote, right? Mentianyu nodded hastily and looked at her with tears in his eyes. Let's see how you perform. After saying this, Shenyazi turned around and boarded the sky boat. Mentianyu hurriedly followed her, fearing that she would leave him behind. Jia, didn't you say you knew a place with a lot of monsters? Give me directions, Shenyazi said to Jia. Hello, Jia, whose name was called, stepped forward with a poop. Mentianyu and Jia glanced at each other and both felt threatened. This A-2 player usually doesn't fight for anything, but he didn't expect to be so good at critical moments. No, they have to work hard to show their value, and they can't be compared to him. Otherwise, what if the antidote is only given to him? In order to become men again, in order to regain their glory, they have to catch up. The skyboat was traveling fast in the air, and flew far away in a whoosh. Finally, half an hour later, Jia pointed to a dark mountain in front of him. Well, this is it, Miss Shen. On that mountain, the flowers, grass, trees, soil, rivers, and even monsters were all black. Looking at it makes people feel very depressed. Before Jia entered the secret realm, he was teleported to a cave in the Black Mountain. The cave was very large and filled with a group of porcupines. Porcupine, as you can tell from its name, is a monster beast that looks very similar to a pig. It is black and thick, as big as a carriage, and has 2 long tusks in its mouth. The key point is that it is not just one person, but a group of them. At that time, he almost peed in fear. Moreover, this cave is a colony of porcupines, and the smell is so intoxicating that he blocked his sense of smell in time to avoid being fainted. Fortunately, the porcupines were sleeping and did not notice his appearance. He quietly slipped out of the cave, saw the bright sun outside, let out a sigh of relief, and then felt like he was alive. However, the road down the mountain was bumpy, and after that, he encountered various groups of monsters one after another. The rabbit with extremely sharp claws and spitting wind blades, the big bird with 3 legs and a human face, the big snake with 4 wings and 6 legs. Those monsters are very unfriendly to humans. He originally thought that he would die before leaving the battle, but in the end he escaped from the mountain in a daze. That process was really a narrow escape from death. At that time, he looked back at the mountain peak and vowed never to come here again. Who would think that things are unpredictable? It has only been a few days and we are back here again. Shenyazi didn't know the emotion in Jia's heart. After confirming the destination, she lowered the skyboat. The skyboat was affixed with invisibility charms and breath-containing charms, and a soundproof barrier was also set up, so it did not disturb any strange beasts all the way down. On the way, Shenyazi also saw a big snake with 4 wings and 6 legs mentioned in Jia. Perched on a big tree that could hold 5 or 6 people hugging each other, the scales under his neck opened and closed as if breathing. That is obviously fat. When the skyboat landed in front of it, its originally closed eyes suddenly opened, staring at the void with vigilance as if aware of it. Several people on the boat suddenly became nervous and did not dare to breathe. Shenyazi was also a little nervous because she couldn't see through the strength of this fat man. This shows that it is at least 1 level higher than her, which is equivalent to the level of human cultivation in the foundation building stage. She cannot afford to provoke such a monster yet. It happened that the spirit crystal beast woke up at this time and jumped out of the cabin. Shenyazi, I'm hungry. I want to eat barbecue, meat porridge, and steamed buns. Eat, you big-headed devil. Shut up, Shenyazi subconsciously drove Tianzhou away at high speed. However, it would be better if she didn't run away. When she ran, she would inevitably bring up a gust of wind, which immediately attracted Fei Yi's attention. It flapped its wings and caught up, and its speed was no weaker than Tianzhou. Boom! Fei swept his tail over and swept Tianzhou until it rolled in the air and turned several somersaults. The people on the boat were spinning and knocked upside down. Fei Yi's tail was quite powerful, and the talismans and barriers set up on the ship were instantly ineffective. Shen Yizi and the others were all exposed under Fei Yi's nose. Seeing Fei Yi grabbing him, Shen Yizi controlled the Tianzhou boat and narrowly avoided its claws with a whoosh. Fei chased after him and almost caught up several times. Thanks to Shen Yizi's quick reactions and his superb skills in controlling Tianzhou, the sky boat flies straight into the sky, flies down the current, and makes twists and turns, always throwing away the fat at the critical moment. Kui Yu and others were so dizzy that they almost vomited. The most serious one is Min Tianyue. As the only mortal on the ship, if it weren't for the spiritual shield, he would have been thrown off long ago. As the culprit that triggered this chase and escape battle, the spirit crystal beast maintained its balance very well. Its claws clasped Shen Yizi's shoulders firmly, and kept commanding from the side, "Quick, right? Right. Turn around, we're going to hit you. Ah, hurry up, that big fat insect is catching up." "Shut up," Shen Yizi yelled angrily. The spirit crystal beast shut up angrily. The spiritual energy in her body was about to run out. Shen Yizi's face turned pale, but Fat Yi was chasing her so hard that she didn't even have time to drink back the spiritual liquid. "Do you still have the stone from before? Give me one. Once you get rid of the fat, I will make delicious food for you." Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 414. There are many, the spirit crystal beast waved its wings, and there was a pile of spirit crystals on the ground. Shen Yizi's pupils shrank and he was ecstatic. If it wasn't the wrong time, he would have really wanted to hold it and kiss it a few times. A spiritual crystal was placed in the groove of Tianzhou's operating panel, and Tianzhou instantly felt as if it had been injected with chicken blood. Its speed soared, leaving Fei Yi behind in the blink of an eye. However, before she could breathe a sigh of relief, another big bird attacked from ahead. It was a three-legged bird with a human face and its wings spread out to a length of more than 10 meters. Shen Yizi felt a huge pressure before he even got close. "Sisters Yizi, what should we do now?" Kui Yu nervously grabbed her sleeve. "Quickly, lure the big bird to the big fat insect, let the two of them bite the dog, and both of them will be injured," the spirit crystal beast suggested excitedly. "Good idea." Shen Yizi swung around in front of the big bird, and in the short time it passed, the spirit crystal beast raised its buttocks and farted loudly at it. In this wave of operations, the hatred value has been steadily increased. The big bird, who was just a little curious about Tianzhou, was instantly angry. How dare a weak chicken dare to blatantly provoke it? "I'm so tired of living. If you don't give it a severe lesson, how can it hang around in this mountain in the future?" The big bird carried the power of thunder and charged towards the sky boat. Shen Yizi turned around and ran towards the way he came. The spirit crystal beast jumped on her shoulder. "How's it going?" "I did a good job, right?" Shen Yizi's mouth twitched. Although he didn't want to admit it, the move he made just now was indeed very powerful, and the operation was simply amazing. Fat Yi thought he had lost track of Tianzhou and was roaring uncontrollably in the air. Unexpectedly, it came back on its own initiative and immediately flapped its wings to catch it. Behind him, the big bird was also coming towards Tianzhou. Just when he was about to hit Fei Yi, Shen Yizi controlled the Tianzhou boat to deflect and passed it diagonally. A few seconds later, the scene where the two monsters collided in her imagination did not happen. Rather, grass, why are the big bird and the big fat insect chasing after each other? The spirit crystal beast was dumbfounded. Kui Yu was so frightened that she closed her eyes and hugged Shen Yizi's waist tightly, not daring to look back. As for Min Tianyu and Jia de Jia, they were knocked unconscious long ago. But fainting can be regarded as a kind of happiness, at least you don't have to face the full pursuit from two second-level monsters. Otherwise, their hearts may burst. Shen Yizi didn't panic anymore, because she found that the spiritual power contained in the spiritual crystal was really terrifying. After burning for so long, it was only a little smaller. Such a big one, enough for Tianzhou to run at full strength for a whole day. And Tianzhou's speed at this time is faster than Fei and Big Bird, and they can't catch up at all. She even had time to admire their swift pursuit. And recorded it with a photo stone. This is a rare opportunity to have close contact with the second-order demon. Wouldn't it be a pity not to leave a trace? However, she was still reluctant to waste the spiritual power in the spiritual crystal. After flying a kite with two big monsters, she found an opportunity to escape. I said, why don't you take the opportunity to kill them? I haven't eaten roasted bird wings yet. As for the big fat insect, although it looks a bit ugly, it might taste good. The spirit crystal beast was dreaming when it was suddenly hit on the head and jumped up immediately. Ouch, why did you hit me? Shen Yizi snorted coldly, you are so capable, just go ahead and talk big here. The spirit crystal beast covered its head with its wings and felt guilty for a while, but soon straightened up again. Humph, speaking of it, if it weren't for the beautiful stones I contributed this time, and just relying on this broken ship, you would have been killed by that big fat boat. The bug was caught. His paws tapped rhythmically on the deck, not too proudly. He seems to be a great hero. Shen Yizi calmly picked up the spiritual crystals scattered everywhere and put them into the space. Then who made Fei notice our whereabouts before? Huh. The spirit crystal beast gradually lowered its head in this prolonged hum. I didn't mean it. Besides, I have redeemed myself. The spirit crystal beast slowly moved to her side and rubbed against her legs. It's getting late, isn't it time to eat? The spiritual crystal beast communicated with Shen Yizi through spiritual consciousness. Kui Yu couldn't hear it, but looking at its humanistic actions, he couldn't help but be attracted by it. Sisters Yizi, did you raise this? She squatted down next to the spiritual crystal beast and wanted to reach out and touch it, but it avoided it. Well, wake up Min Tianyu and the others, and I'll prepare food. Today was too exciting, and she just escaped from the pursuit of two big monsters. She was not in the mood to cook, so she took out the cooked food in the space. There was no barbecue, and the spirit crystal beast was very unhappy, but after it tasted the new delicacies, its unhappiness flew away in an instant. Most of the food on the dinner table is taken care of by it. The two of them and the beast were eating happily here. Min Tianyu and the three of them were squatting on one side, swallowing their saliva with greed. Shen Yizi glanced at them lightly. Why, you didn't prepare anything to eat when you went out this time. She did not confiscate their storage bags. According to Min Tianyu's indolent and enjoyable nature, he probably wanted to bring all his belongings with him on this trip to the secret place. Even if he couldn't bring that much, he would definitely be able to have enough food and clothing. Pretending to be pitiful for her here? Ah! Noticing the coldness on her body, the three of them did not dare to stare any longer, turned around silently, and took out their food. Min Tianyu originally thought that what he prepared was a big meal, but compared with what Shen Yizi and the others ate, it was just pig food. It's a pity that the female devil is so cruel that she doesn't even want to share anything with them, alas. Have a peaceful night. After breakfast the next day, Shen Yizi continued to let Jia lead the way to the outside of the cave where the porcupine group lived. Jia, you go in and explore what's going on in the cave, and tell me the situation as soon as possible. Shen Yizi handed the two of them a small pile of talismans, including lightness talisman, invisibility talisman, fire talisman, communication talisman, etc., which were all practical talismans. She drew it newly last night, and the spiritual ink on it still has a fresh fragrance. Really give it to us, Jia couldn't believe it. Jia was also a little excited. This was the first time he had so many talismans and his hands were shaking when he held them. Min Tianyu looked at them with envy, jealousy, and hatred in his eyes. Otherwise, Go back quickly. Before the two turned around and entered the cave, Shen Yizi took a deep look at them. Only I can solve the Jing Shen pill, so you'd better not have any other thoughts. Don't worry, Miss Shen. I'm only in the second stage of qi refining. I was prepared to die before I came here. The current situation is much better than I expected. Why can't I think about seeking death? Jia Er looked at her openly. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 415. Shen Yizi smiled slightly and said, Go. Secretly asked the little frog to follow him. It is both surveillance and protection. Soon, little frog reported back to her that there were only a few porcupines in the cave. She estimated that most of the troops had gone out to look for food, and the rest were either respected or had special status. Shen Yizi's guess was correct. The messenger from Jia Er told her, there are only a few sow porcupines and a litter of piglets in the cave. Shen Yizi handed Kuiyu 3 sticks of ecstasy incense and 3 antidotes. Go in and light the ecstasy incense with Jiada and the others to stun the porcupine inside. She wanted to exercise Kuiyu. She has experimented with this ecstasy incense. Even Yi Chang couldn't resist it for a few minutes, let alone the porcupine in it. Although the porcupine has rough skin and thick flesh, it is difficult to break through the defense, but if it is stunned, doesn't it have to be slaughtered? As long as they were careful not to be discovered by the porcupine when lighting the incense, it would not be difficult for the 3 of them to kill the porcupine inside. What's more, they still hold the talismans she gave them. This is also a test for them. If they can't even do this, then she has no interest in taking them with her. After all, she is here to earn contribution points, not to do charity. Kuiyu took the incense and said, Sisters Hizzy, just wait for my good news. Well, if you have anything to do, send me a messenger. Shen Yizi watched her walk into the cave. Min Tianyu felt very uncomfortable when he saw that Kuiyu and the others had tasks, and he was the only one left. Squatting on the ground and pulling weeds depressedly. Shen Yizi ignored him and sat down to practice. Half an hour passed. Kuiyu and the other 2 people came out of the cave one after another. Kuiyu was stained with blood and smelled like a porcupine cave, which was really unpleasant. But her attention was not on it at all at this time. Sisters Hizzy, I killed 2 porcupines. She excitedly jumped up to Shen Yizi, showing off in a tone like a little girl who scored high in an exam and presented a treasure to her parents. Shen Yizi performed a cleaning technique on her and touched her head. Great. Kuiyu suddenly smiled broadly. Shen Yizi looked at A and A again. A and A looked fine, but A and A were seriously injured, with blood on their lips. What happened? Kuiyu felt a little apologetic. Sisters Hizzy, I was too adventurous. I rushed in as soon as I saw a porcupine fainting. As a result, a porcupine hadn't completely fainted and rushed towards me. I was so frightened that if it hadn't been Jia Er reacted quickly and blocked it for me. Maybe I was the one who got hurt. Shen Yizi threw a porcelain bottle to Jia Er, rejuvenation pill, healing medicine, take it. Jia Er opened the bottle and smelled an extremely fresh medicinal fragrance. After taking the medicine, most of his injuries were healed in a short time, and his face turned red. Seeing this, Jiada couldn't help but feel a little envious. Where are the contributions and materials? A hurriedly presented the jade token and the storage bag. The storage bag can't hold so much, so part of it is stored by the jade token. Shen Yizi took it and transferred half of the contribution points and materials in the jade tablet to Kuiyu. He selected some useful materials and returned the rest. You can judge these for yourselves. Jiada couldn't help but be shocked. He thought Shen Yizi would take it all, but he didn't expect that she would keep half of it. This is much more than what they can earn from hunting monsters. Although they were sent by the Min family to assist Min Tianyu, the resources the Min family provided them were far less than what Shen Yizi gave them at once. After just one day of following her, they already earned several times more contribution points than before. Jia couldn't help but feel happy. Menti and Yua, who had never been involved in human affairs, found a good future for them by accident this time. Next, let's go find the group of porcupines that are out. Porcupines are found in groups. Shenyazi searched around and found them by a river. These porcupines are in open areas, so using ecstasy will not be very effective. Shenyazi thought for a while and decided to continue using the previous lure method of hunting earth mole beasts. But if you switch to a porcupine, the specific steps have to be changed. Shenyazi found a suitable location and asked Mentianyu and the other three to dig a large and deep pit, ensuring that the porcupine would never be able to get out if it fell in. After digging, she laid a layer of wooden boards on top and asked the elders to try it out. The wooden boards were enough to bear their weight. Another layer of phantom formation was laid out on top, making the pit look no different from its surroundings. Then, she deployed a battle strategy for porcupines. You are responsible for taking turns to lure the porcupines over. Remember, only lure one at a time. After coming over, try to lure the porcupines into this pit. Okay, the two nodded. Shenyazi asked, have you used up the talismans I gave you before? Jia patted his chest, there are more. You don't have to skimp on the talismans and seals, use them when you need to use them. Because Jia saved Kuiyu, Shenyazi's attitude toward them became much gentler. Seeing that Shenyazi was ignoring him again, Mentianyu jumped out and volunteered, I can also lure the porcupine over. He wanted to participate himself, and Shenyazi knew that he would not stop him. Okay, then Jia, you can take some of him with you. Kuiyu asked, Sisters Hizi, what about me? You, follow me to deal with the porcupine when the time comes. Boom, boom, boom. The ground shook. Shenyazi thought, here we come. Jia ran back wildly and quickly ran towards the trap. Although the porcupine has strong defense, its speed is mediocre, so a person with the third level of chi refining can sneak past it. I don't know what he did, but the porcupine chased after him menacingly, its eyes full of fierce light, its nostrils breathing heavily, and its anger level had reached its peak. The meter-long fangs almost hit him several times, which made people sweat for him. In addition to the two tusks, the porcupine's body is also covered with sharp thorns, each of which is as high as a palm. If it gets close, the end will definitely not be good. So Shenyazi had no intention of fighting the porcupine in close combat from the beginning. Jia was very helpful and successfully brought the porcupine into the pit. The pit was not just a pit, it was also filled with sharp weapons. The moment the porcupine fell, Shenyazi quickly set up a soundproof barrier to prevent the porcupine's screams from spreading. Although it was penetrated by a sharp weapon, the porcupine did not die immediately, but struggled hard. Shenyazi brought Kuiyu to the pit and said, I'll leave it to you. Kuiyu took a deep breath and launched the only fireball technique she knew at the porcupine inside. However, the next moment, an embarrassing scene happened. Her fireball went out with a pop before it even landed on the porcupine. Kuiyu was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a crack in the ground and crawl into it. Shenyazi patted her shoulder, it's okay, take your time, the porcupine is here anyway. The porcupine seemed to understand this sentence and struggled harder, but it was all in vain. Finally, it bleeds to death. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 416. Both A, D, and A were successful in attracting the porcupine. Mentianyu watched from the side and felt that it was not that difficult. When it was his turn to play, he was very complacent. Although he was unable to practice, he still practiced boxing and kicking a lot on weekdays, and his skills were still very flexible. He felt that he was no worse than the two of them, and he went away in high spirits. However, the porcupine soon taught him how to behave. When Mentianu ran back, he was in a mess, and there was not just one porcupine behind him, but a group of them. "Help, help me quickly!" Mentianu shouted with a frightened face. Shenyazi turned away his eyes expressionlessly, let a few people get on the boat, steered the sky boat past the group of porcupines, and slipped Mentianu up. The moment he was almost taken away, a herd of porcupines roared past his original position. "Phew, you scared me to death." Mentianu patted his chest with lingering fear, reached his head and looked down carefully. If it weren't for Shenyazi just now, he would have been trampled into a pulp by the porcupines. Suddenly realizing that something was wrong with the situation, he slowly turned his head and saw Shenyazi and others staring at him with indifferent and accusatory expressions. His heart trembled and he scratched his forehead. "Well, I originally wanted to lure a porcupine over, but I accidentally disturbed the other porcupines. As soon as they saw me, they all rushed over. I could only fight with all my strength. Run, run." His voice became lower and lower, his head lowered, and he knew that he had messed up. Shenyazi took a sip of mint tea to calm down the fire. "According to the plan, we could lure the porcupines over one by one and kill most of them. The rest would not be a concern. By then, all the contribution points of this whole group of porcupines would be ours. One porcupine is 180 contribution points. How many do you think there are in this group?" Mentianu has not been good at arithmetic since he was a child. How can he understand it? 10 fingers pulled it apart for a long time, and my head was dizzy. But now, it's all gone. Shenyazi slapped the table. Mentianu was so frightened that his neck shrank and he wanted to get in right there. Shenyazi pressed his forehead. "Is it too late to throw this guy off now?" As if aware of her intention, Mentianu was so frightened that he rushed in front of her and grabbed her sleeves. "Sister, aunt, ancestor, you must not abandon me. Otherwise, my life will be at stake. Tell me this. These are all messy names." Shenyazi rolled his eyes helplessly. Seeing that she didn't speak, Mentianu racked his brains. "Look, I'm still useful. For example, my ability to squeeze shoulders and beat legs is absolutely top-notch. If you don't believe me, try it." He is not bragging when he says this. At home, he often uses this trick to deal with a number of female members of the family. He turned behind her in an extremely flattering manner and gave her a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. Go, sisters Hizzy, does she need you to pinch her shoulders and beat her legs?" "Where do you put me?" Kuiyu pushed him away and stared at him unkindly. He actually wanted to take her place, which is really deplorable. Mentianu shrank to the side without feeling aggrieved, looking very pitiful. After all, Jia still missed some old feelings and came to his rescue. "I think the group of porcupines have probably gone back to the cave. Why don't we go to the cave and wait for them?" When Shenyazi flew Tianzhou back, he happened to see the last two porcupines swinging their thick buttocks into the hole. A, two, you two are responsible for digging a hole in front of the hole. The deeper you dig, the better, speed. Mentianu, take the incense and fan it into the cave." Shenyazi took out the incense and asked everyone to take the antidote. Throw this smoke bomb into the hole." Smoke bombs release a large amount of thick smoke as soon as they hit the ground, accompanied by a pungent smell that rises to the sky, hence the name. The four of them got the order and worked hard. Shenyazi used the Qingfeng technique to blow the incense and smoke into the cave in waves. The incense of ecstasy mixed with thick smoke poured into the cave where the porcupines lived. The porcupines had eaten and drank outside and were ready to have a good sleep when they came back. Unexpectedly, waves of thick smoke came in, making the pigs almost suffocate. "There is no other way," they can only get up and run outside. The porcupine herd is out, Mentianyu, you can retreat. Mentianyu threw the unburned ecstasy incense in his hand into the hole, and Saya ran towards Shenyazi. Kuiyu threw the 2 remaining smoke bombs in his hand and ran in front of Mentianyu in a flash. She made a face at him and ran to the boat first. Mentianyu, humph, I don't care about a little girl. Jia de Jia you guys also come up quickly. When the herd of porcupines appeared in front of them, Jia de Jia finally put the sharp weapon away, used the vines dropped by Shenyazi to spin up, and was pulled onto the boat by her. The hole opened by the porcupine group was not large and could only accommodate up to 3 porcupines entering and exiting at the same time. When the 3 porcupines in front of them rushed out, they stepped into the hole without any surprise. The first one to fall was stabbed into a sieve by a sharp weapon. Before it had time to struggle, it was crushed to death by the second one, and its body turned into dots of light and disappeared. Shenyazi and others were not allowed to take action. The porcupine underneath was used as a meat pad, and the second head was stabbed through with a sharp weapon. Just like this, one after another, dozens of them were killed in the blink of an eye. The porcupine behind saw such a big hole in front and wanted to stop, but how could the porcupine in the hole allow it? He kept running out and pushed the porcupine in front of him that couldn't break into the pit. At the back, the sharp weapons inside were all sharpened. There is no way to kill a porcupine in one go. Shenyazi was replenishing his arrows at the side, and he was calling out the golden archery, windblade, and fireball techniques at the same time. Tu and Kuiyu are not far behind either. Anyway, after the spiritual energy is used up, there is still spiritual liquid to replenish. They beat him very hard. In the process of performing spells over and over again regardless of consumption, they became more and more skilled in the use of spells, and in this cycle of consumption replenishment consumption, the barriers in their bodies were washed away thinner and thinner. It's getting thinner and thinner, and it only takes a slight impact to advance to the next level. But they did not realize this while they were outputting like crazy. As for Mentianyu, he is just a salted fish shouting 666 next to him. And kept busy, serving tea and water. Jia de Jia dug the hole deep and big, but it happened to be right in front of the entrance of the hole. The porcupine couldn't fly or jump across it. It could only move backwards. However, the smoke bombs contain ingredients that can make porcupines irritable and crazy. They have all inhaled some of it. At this moment, they have no reason to think at all. They have all turned into irritable pigs and only know how to run rampant. The ecstasy incense also played its role, making their movements gradually become sluggish and stiff. In the end, the group of porcupines either fell into the pit or fainted in the hole. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 417. Shenyazi went in personally and gave them a good time. This wave of harvest was huge. Shenyazi gave everyone 10% of the contribution points and materials, while he took the bulk. Mentianyu held his jade plaque and looked at the contribution points on it, almost moved to tears. Sister Shen, you are my reborn parents, I will follow you from now on. Jia and Jia also nodded, looking at Shenyazi eagerly. This is the first time they have experienced how simple it is to earn contribution points. It's almost an increase of hundreds and thousands. In less than half a day, it has risen so much. Unlike before, their strength was not that high, and they had an even more useless Mentianyu, but he was still restless, and in this dangerous secret realm, he was still thinking about his lower body. It's good if they can save their lives, how about some contribution? Don't think about that. But now, following Shenyazi, the point of contribution is no longer far away. The big hole was filled up, and after the smell in the hole was almost gone, Shenyazi let a few people in. Sisters Hizzy, why do we still have to go in? Of course I'll go and see if there are any treasures inside. In fact, the small frog has been discovered. Kuiu couldn't help but look forward to it. The size of the porcupine is there, so the cave cannot be winding and winding. After walking for a while, a vast space appears in front of you. Shenyi knew that several monks had cleverly blocked their sense of smell and switched to internal breathing. Only Mentianyu was almost fainted by the ecstasy smell as soon as he came in, and ran to the side to vomit. Shenyi kindly handed him a mask. The mask was soaked in medicinal juice. Mentianyu took it and put it on, and instantly felt a cool air pouring into his nose, making his whole body come alive. "Thank you, Sister Shen." Kuiu wrinkled her nose and said, "Sisters Hizzy, I want it too." Shenyi simply gave one to each of them. "Let's look for it separately." The 5 people walked in different directions, and Shenyi walked directly towards the direction prompted by Zioa. In the midst of a pile of porcupine excrement, a cluster of ground flowering flowers suddenly grew. This is a magical medicine that can be used to make elixirs. "Sisters Hizzy, come and see what this is," Kuiyu's surprised voice came. Shenyi walked over and came to a large stone pointed by Kuiyu. It is a naturally occurring large stone in the shape of a wish. It was probably used by porcupines to grind their teeth. There are many traces of wear on it. At one point, a palm-sized piece of jade was revealed on the surface of the stone. The jade was white and greasy, and it was so full of spiritual energy that it overflowed. Obviously a piece of spiritual jade. Ling jade has a wide range of uses and can be made into jewelry, jade slips, weapon refining, etc. It is a precious material. "You is so lucky." Kuiyu said happily, "Sisters Hizzy, let's untie it quickly and take a look. Let's go out first." The smell in the cave was too strong, and they would be stink if they stayed any longer. As soon as Shenyi waved her hand, the stone on the ground, which was as big as a bathtub, disappeared and was taken into space by her. Although they guessed that she had a good storage of magic weapons, they were still a little shocked when they saw the scene with their own eyes. Thinking about them, they don't even have a storage bag. The one on his body was only temporarily lent to them by the Min family, and they had to return it when they left the secret realm. Back on the boat, Shenyi took out the stone again. Kuiyu and others gathered around. Without a dedicated stone tool, Shenyi knocked with a hammer and chisel a little bit. Kuiyan looked interesting and joined in. Mentianyu and the others couldn't stand to watch, so they each occupied a position and started knocking stones. Fortunately, this stone is big enough for 5 people to occupy one corner each, which is more than enough. The spirit crystal beast was staying in the room enjoying snacks when he noticed their return. When he came out, he saw several people squatting there and knocking rocks. "What are you doing?" it asked Shenyi. Shenyi didn't even raise his head. The spirit crystal beast looked at it for a while, then stepped forward. "Let me try." Before Shenyi could stop him, his beak pecked the stone several times. With a click, the stone skin on the surface of the stone cracked, and the cracks spread like a spider web. With a light touch by Shenyi, the stone skin peeled off automatically, revealing the crystal clear and delicate white jade flesh inside. The spirit crystal beast gave her a proud look. "Look, I got it done for you in just a few seconds. I saved you a lot of trouble, right?" Shenyi was completely attracted by the spiritual jade in front of him at this moment, so how could he care about what it said? He nodded casually, yes, you are the best. Is there any reward?" "Barbecued meat, braised pork, steamed crabs are all fine. I'm not picky about food," spirit crystal beast asked expectantly. "Okay, I'll prepare something delicious for you later." Shenyi responded casually. The stone skin was all removed by several people, and what was left was a whole piece of spiritual jade. It was placed in front of several people, delicate and moist, white like snow cotton, and even more rare, pure and clear, without flaws. Even the two straight men, A and Xia, can't avert their eyes. Kuiyu even touched it directly. Sisters Hizzy, it's so beautiful. After the jade was peeled off, the problem of how to distribute it came up. Sisters Hizzy, I will listen to you, but there is a certain person who contributes the least. I think it's okay to give him a little bit of credit. Kuiyu glanced at someone sideways. The direction of this someone should not be too obvious. Mentianyu smiled bitterly and scratched his face. What Miss Kui said is that I didn't do anything in the first place, so I'm satisfied with getting so many contribution points, so there's no need to share the spiritual jade with me. Shen Yazi weighed the Lingyu, a total of 1,876 kilograms. Such a large piece of spiritual jade is really rare. Shen Yazi, you discovered the spiritual jade, you should take the big one. Kuiyu disagreed. Sisters Hizzy, without you I wouldn't even be able to enter the porcupine cave. Where can I find this piece of spiritual jade? The spirit crystal beast couldn't see it. It's just a stone. Let's separate it quickly. It's still being pushed here and there. Having that time, it's better to cook more delicious food for it. Is this an ordinary stone? This is spiritual jade, very valuable. A piece as big as your little finger is probably worth hundreds of taels of silver. The spirit crystal beast rolled its eyes. Can you buy a lot of delicious food with money? Of course. I know there is a place with a lot of this kind of stone. I will take you there, and after you dig it out, you can exchange it with me for delicious food. The surprise came so unexpectedly that Shen Yazi tried his best to control his facial expressions to prevent the ghostly crystal beast from taking the opportunity to open his mouth. Ken. While communicating with the spirit crystal beast's spiritual consciousness, Shen Yazi's men were also busy and accurately cut the spirit jade into 5 pieces. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 418. 2 large ones and 3 small ones. The big one weighs about 700 or 800 kilograms, and the small one weighs only a few dozen kilograms. Shen Yazi and Kuiyu each took a big piece. You can each pick a piece of the rest. Mentianyu was very surprised. He didn't expect that he could also get a piece, and it weighed dozens of kilograms. Even though it couldn't be compared with what Shen Yazi and the others got, it was already a lot. The value of this piece of spiritual jade cannot be taken lightly even with the financial resources of the Min family. At this moment, he couldn't help but feel that Shen Yazi was really a good person. He decided that he would never call her the devil again. Jia and Jia also took a piece each, and expressed their sincere thanks to Shen Yazi and Shen. Thank you, Miss Shen, and thank you, Miss Kui. Kuiyu raised her chin proudly. Shen Yazi smiled and said, okay, the spoils have been divided. You must be hungry too. I'll make something delicious and let's celebrate. After getting such a large piece of spiritual jade, and getting the news from the spiritual crystal beast that there was a lot of spiritual jade somewhere, she was in a very, very beautiful mood at the moment. Her hands were itchy, and she wanted to treat herself to something delicious. Hearing this, several people were very happy. I just finished cleaning the porcupine group and got a lot of porcupine materials, including fur, tusks, inner alchemy, and meat. Mountains of meat. The porcupine has been decomposed and recycled. The hair on the body and the internal organs in the belly have been cleaned, leaving only a bare pig. You can just take it out and cook it. It is not too convenient. Shen Yazi took a piglet. Although it was a piglet, its size was only a few laps smaller than the adult pigs outside. It was best to use it to roast a whole pig. The pork is a piece of meat that is tight and tender, alternating between fat and lean. It is the real pork belly and is the best choice for braised pork. Let's have another dish of honey-glazed pork ribs, lion's head, crystal hooves, tube bone kelp soup, and jar meat. To make jar meat, directly put the meat pieces in, add onions, ginger, bamboo shoots, and some rock sugar. No need to add anything else. Seal the jar, place it in a charcoal basin, and cover most of the jar with charcoal ash. Bring to a simmer. Don't worry about it at all in the middle. When the charcoal fire burns out, the meat in the pot will be cooked. While Shenyazi was grilling meat, he used a constant burning cauldron to cook several short-term dishes, and put them into the warming array. Kuiyu and others were squatting at the table, staring eagerly at the dishes and watching her brush the sauce on the roast pig. The amount of saliva swallowed is not only 10 pounds, but also 7 or 8 pounds. The spirit crystal beast couldn't stop jumping in front of her. How long will it take? I'm going to starve to death. Shenyazi was still leisurely, taking his time. Although she was quite greedy, she was not so anxious when she saw how anxious some people were but couldn't get enough to eat. Finally, the roasted pig was ready, and Shenyazi placed it in the center of the table. The skin is golden, cumin dances with oil on it, and the fragrance is like a seductive little fairy, constantly tingling people's nerves. The people who had been waiting for a long time immediately grabbed it without saying anything. When you finally have it in your mouth. Oh my God, this is so delicious. It feels like all the days I lived in the past have been in vain. When Mentianyu reached for the roasted pig again, Shenyazi stopped him. You are not a monk, and the spiritual energy contained in these dishes is relatively strong. I advise you not to eat so much, otherwise you will feel uncomfortable later. Kuiyu suddenly laughed with schadenfreude. She cut off a whole pig's trotter and gnawed it in her hand. Her expression was one of enjoyment. It was clear that she was deliberately coveting Mentianyu. Jia Dejia said nothing and just kept eating. Mentianyu looked at it and felt like he was going crazy. There has never been a moment like this when I wish I was a monk. In the past, he also wanted to embark on the path of cultivating immortals, but it was more out of the pursuit of power and curiosity about cultivating immortals, but now, he just wants to eat more pieces of meat. No matter what, just die, at least be a full-fledged ghost before you die. Mentianyu couldn't bear it anymore and quietly reached out to the roasted pig. Kuiyu immediately slapped his hand away. What are you doing? Sisters Hizi told you not to eat too much. Of course, she didn't do it for his own good, but she didn't want him to take away her flesh. Shenyazi said calmly, let him eat. In the end, he took in too much spiritual energy and it was none of our business if he burst. Kuiyu thought of that scene, ha ha ha, being exploded by spiritual energy. I have never seen such a way to die. Come on, Mentianyu, come and show me one. The damage caused by these words is simply tons. Mentianyu. Compared with life, it doesn't matter even if you eat less, that's weird. While others are eating with gusto but you can only watch from the sidelines, this is simply a public execution. Mentianyu took out the food he brought in, stared at the delicious food on the table, and took a bite. Even if he can't eat, he still wants to read enough. After eating and drinking, Kuiyu lazily leaned on Shenyazi and burped happily. Anda and Gia looked at each other, and an idea arose in their minds at the same time. If you can always be by Shenyazi's side and eat this divine delicacy, even if you don't become a man, it doesn't seem to be a big deal. Shenyazi would probably laugh and cry if he knew what they were thinking. The food you just ate contains a lot of spiritual energy. Let's meditate and digest it, Shenyazi said to them. Mentianyu, who was sitting in the corner, had fallen into autism and chose to isolate himself from the world. After digesting the spiritual energy he had eaten, Shenyazi led a few people to continue hunting monsters to earn contribution points. The cunning rabbit swarm, the psychic ant swarm, the thunder shadow leopard swarm. Swipe them one by one. After a few days, Shenyazi and the others had almost wiped out all the monsters that could be brushed in the Black Mountain, and the harvest was huge. The first is the visible and tangible gains such as contribution points and monster materials. Secondly, everyone's cultivation and strength have been greatly improved. Shen Yazi has been promoted to the 9th level of Qi refining, Kui Yu has reached the 3rd level of Qi refining, the 4th level of Jia De Qi refining, and the 3rd level of Jia Er Qi refining. Even though Min Tianyu is still a mortal, he has made tremendous progress. Perhaps he was stimulated, so he picked up the long-abandoned family martial arts and practiced it day and night. Once he got serious about it, he found that his understanding was quite good and he quickly got started. In addition, his body is constantly nourished by spiritual energy, he also eats a lot of spiritual food made by Shen Yazi, and he fights monsters every day. After several rounds of training, his strength value is slowly rising. Without the use of spiritual power, Kui Yu would not be his opponent. Min Tianyu was very proud of this. Martial arts training pays attention to refining and transforming qi. Where does this essence come from? Not even food. Because of this, Min Tianyu's need for food has increased, and he can also digest food containing spiritual energy. It doesn't taste too good if you can eat it with an open belly. Min Tianyu practiced even more vigorously. He stayed up every day and meditated crazily. It's like he's possessed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 419. Compared with the former dandy who was weak and frail, with blue eyes, and who looked like he was in bad health at first glance, Min Tianyu now seemed like a completely different person. His eyes became sharp. The whole person was infused with energy. In this regard, Shen Yazi is happy to see it succeed. After a few days of working together, this temporarily formed team has become a decent team, and they cooperate very well when hunting monsters. Originally, she just wanted to take Kui Yu with her on a temporary basis, and she brought along Jia De Jia Er. After all, they were 2 monks, so they could always contribute something. As for Min Tianyu, it was purely incidental. Unexpectedly, they gave her a lot of surprises here. I guess she was frightened by what she said earlier, I will only give them the antidote if they perform well. In fact, she was completely wrong. Min Tianyu and the others had completely forgotten about the Jingshen pills. The reason why they worked so hard for performance was simply because they were afraid that she would leave them behind and never get to eat what she did. Meal. Having had another full meal, a few people were gathering together lazily to chat, when a movement came from the distance. Without Shen Yazi's instructions, the few people quickly became vigilant, quickly dealt with the traces of the scene, jumped on the sky boat, stared at the direction of the movement, and were ready to take action at any time. After a while, a large group of apes were seen running towards a person. The monkey has black hair all over its body, an outturned nose, and a strong body, 2 to 3 meters tall, very similar to a gorilla. They are very good at climbing and jumping, and they can move dozens of meters in the forest. A large group of them chased and blocked the man, and soon blocked the man's way. Isn't this Xiaoben? Shen Yazi was hiding in the sky boat, and his eyebrows slightly raised when he saw him. Kui Yu was also a little surprised. Seeing that he was besieged by a group of monkeys, she was a little gloating at first. She still remembered the hatred that this man had for kidnapping her and her brother before. But seeing that he was getting more and more embarrassed and almost died, she couldn't bear it anymore. Want to save him? Shen Yazi asked. I'm not so kind to anyone who wants to save him. However, those apes took the initiative to bring their contribution points to me. I happened to be a little stuffed and wanted to move around. Kui Yu made a movement to expand his arms. Shen Yazi chuckled lightly, I have made a powerful version of the ecstasy incense. Xiaoben helped us contain the monkeys, so we can use it for experimentation. She drove the sky boat closer and gave one to Kui Yu and others. She asked them to take the antidote first. After they lit the ecstasy incense, she used the breeze technique to control the cigarette strands to flow toward the monkeys. She recited 10 numbers silently in her mind, and the next second, bang bang bang, the sounds of falling to the ground sounded one after another. Xiaoban persisted for a while, but he couldn't resist the effect of the incense and fell to the ground. Kuiyu was so happy that she clapped her hands and said, "Sisters Hizzy, you are so powerful. You are so young and you stunned all the monkeys." "Humph, do you need to say how powerful Sister Shen is? If you don't have time to flatter me, you might as well take care of these monkeys quickly to avoid any accidents." Min Tianyu was the first to jump off the sky boat. Kuiyu was so angry that she waved her fist at his back and followed closely behind. Jia Dejia didn't need to give any orders, he had already jumped down. When he raised his knife and dropped it, one by one the monkeys turned into light spots and disappeared. Shen Yizi came to Xiaoban and stuffed a rejuvenation pill and the antidote of ecstasy in his mouth. As for the external injuries, he should apply the medicine himself when he wakes up. With its wings slung behind its back, the spirit crystal beast paced back and forth among the unconscious monkeys, like a man picking meat at the vegetable market. What kind of delicious food can these three-flowered monkeys make? It turns out that this monkey is called the three-flowered monkey. Every time he hunted a kind of monster, Shen Yizi could turn their meat into delicious food, so the spirit crystal beast asked this question. Shen Yizi looked at the monkeys and thought of an inhumane dish in her previous life, monkey brains. Although she loves delicious food, she is not sensitive to this kind of food. Hit the spirit crystal beast on the head and said, "This monkey can't eat it." "Why? Have you ever seen a cannibal? The calico monkey looks so much like a human, can you eat it?" The spirit crystal beast looked at those monkeys again, not to mention, they did look like humans. When Xiaoban woke up, Kuiyu and others had already eliminated the three-flowered monkey group. Another generous amount of contribution points has arrived. But now a few people have become accustomed to it, and they no longer look like they have never seen the world like they did at the beginning. Xiaoban sat up in shock and was surprised to find that he was lying in a room. Just at this moment, there was a knock on the door. Before he could speak, a girl pushed the door open and entered. "Miss Kui." Kuiyu still had a bad look on him. "Sisters Hizzy said that you are probably awake now. Let me come and see you. Here, this is medicine for external application." She placed a box of hemostatic ointment on the bedside table. "Xiaobai, did Miss Shen save me?" "What if?" Kuiyu ignored him, turned around and walked out. Xiaoban touched his nose. It seemed that he and Miss Kui were going to have a hard time getting over it. He applied the medicine, walked out of the room and came to the hall. Shen Yizi was sitting cross-legged on the couch by the window. In front of her was a low-carved lacquered square table. She was writing something. A chicken with colorful feathers squatted opposite her, and Kuiyu peeled peanuts for it to eat. At the round table at the bottom, 3 strange men were sitting, all meditating with their eyes closed, as if they were cultivating. Shen Yizi noticed Xiaoban as soon as he came out, but she was drawing the talisman and could not be interrupted until she finished drawing. Then she put her pen down and looked up. Xiaoban took 2 steps forward and bowed deeply to her. "Thank you very much, Miss Shen, for saving your life. If Miss Shen has anything to do with you in the future, Xia will definitely obey her orders." Kuiyu sneered coldly, "If Sisters Hizzy asks you to die, can you go too?" "Xiaoban." Min Tianyu opened his eyes and looked at Xiaobai with a gloating smile. He was the one who had always been criticized on the ship. Now seeing Kuiyu criticizing others, he felt an inexplicable joy. Especially when this person is Xiaoban. Speaking of which, he and Xiaoban are both dandies, but there are also 3 levels of dandies. Just because Xiaoban has the qualifications to practice and has a beautiful master, he always looks down on him and doesn't even bother to play with him. For this reason, Min Tianyu has already accumulated a lot of anger. Now seeing Xiaoban being so miserable, he was in a very good mood. I wish I could give Kuiyu a round of applause. But considering his position on the ship, he might as well forget it. If Kuiyu's anger is brought to his side, then the gain outweighs the loss. Shen Yizi said to Xiaoban, sit down, our rescue of you is just a matter of convenience. The main reason is to hunt down those 3 flowered monkeys so that we can get contribution points. Xiaoban was silent. Even if it was just a matter of convenience, it was a fact that he saved his life. He would write it down, and if there was a chance in the future, he would definitely repay the favor. Why are those 3 flowered monkeys chasing you? Shen Yizi asked. Adorable baby, the miracle doctor is so awesome. Author, 955. Chapter 420. Just when Xiaoban was about to speak, there was a sudden rumbling in his stomach. Seeing everyone present looking towards his stomach, the tips of his ears were so red that they started to bleed. Shen Yizi took out food and set up a table. Let's talk while eating. Xiaoban was so hungry that he couldn't be polite, so he said his thanks and wolfed down the food. The moment he took it into his mouth, he finally understood why the master kept talking about the food Shen Yizi cooked. Looking at him just cooking rice, Mentianyu felt as if he had seen himself a few days ago, and he felt an inexplicable sense of superiority. He put a piece of rabbit meat into his bowl without any hesitation. Eat slowly, don't choke. Xiaoban looked at the rabbit meat in the bowl, and then at Mentianyu who was smiling at him. His hair stood on end, he choked, and he coughed violently. Kuiyu moved aside in disgust. Mentianyu, I told you that I'm not interested in men, you'd better eat this piece of rabbit meat yourself. Xiaoban picked up the piece of rabbit meat and threw it into Mentianyu's bowl. As soon as he said these words, the dinner table suddenly fell into silence. Kuiyu looked back and forth between Xiaoban and Mentianyu several times, with disgust clearly in his eyes. When she looked at Jia, the two of them shook their heads subconsciously and said in unison, I haven't, I'm just here to protect Mr. Min. Mentianyu. Haha, I am not liked by everyone. He forced his respect and looked at the 3 men on the table with disgust. As for Shen Yizi and Kuiyu, who had once been attracted by him, they didn't feel honored. Okay, let's have a good meal, Xiaoban, let's talk about it, Shen Yizi said, ending the strange atmosphere on the table. By this time, Xiaoban was about 4 to 5 times full, so his eating speed slowed down, and he roughly told what happened. To put it simply, he went through all kinds of difficulties and hardships in the process of looking for Jianmu everywhere, and finally found it, only to find that the Jianmu had already been occupied by a group of monkeys. He squatted for several days and finally figured out the activity pattern of the monkeys. He wanted to cut down a branch while they were out looking for food, but unexpectedly, when they were halfway down, the monkeys came back. Jianmu is a nest for monkeys. Their home has been destroyed. How can they not be angry? Naturally, they will hunt down Xiaobai. After dinner, Shen Yizi said to Xiaoban, where is that tree? Take me there. The monkeys have been wiped out by them, so now that the trees are unattended, it is a good time for them to cut them down. With the trees growing extremely tall and strong, they can be called a forest of single trees, with leaves as big as baskets and full of black flowers. However, the strange thing is that such a big tree stands there without any shadow. The sharks in Chennai River love to make innuendos, but this building has no shadow. Wouldn't it be a good idea to use it to build a boat to cross the river? The branch that Xiaoban cut down earlier is located at the bottom. When you look up, you can see that there is black juice seeping out from the fracture. Shen Yizi drove Tianzhou closer. This branch is very thick. It's probably enough for each of us to chop down one branch. During the chopping process, she got some juice on her hands and was about to use the cleaning technique to remove it. However, she unexpectedly discovered that there was no shadow on her fingers that were stained with juice. With a thought in her mind, she smeared the entire palm of her hand, and then in the projected shadow, that hand no longer existed. It seems that these sap are the secret behind Jianmu's lack of shadow. If the juice is smeared on the sky boat, won't the sky boat have no shadow? Isn't it possible to cross the Shanai River in this way? Is there any need to build ships? Shen Yizi told a few people about his discovery, and Xiaoban said, Miss Shen, in addition to sharks, there are some restrictions on the Shanai River. Only Jianmu can float on the water without sinking. That is Jianmu. Even if the sap is applied to other things, it won't be able to get through it. That's why my master insisted that I use building wood to build the boat. Shen Yizi, so that's it? Let's cut down more branches to avoid running out of branches. Asterisk. By the Chennai River. Shen Yizi blew a feather to the river. As soon as it reached the top of the river, the feather seemed to turn into a heavy stone. It fell straight down and submerged into the water, making a small splash. Shen Yu is indeed worthy of his reputation. She looked around and found that not a single bird or monster could be seen within a few hundred meters to her left. But this made it easier for them to set up camp. After a simple meal, Shen Yizi directed Xiaoban and several men to build a raft. She wanted to build a boat. After all, it was more comfortable and safer to take a boat, but no one here had this ability, so she had to settle for building a raft. Shen Yizi donated the dragon tendons he had collected and used them as ropes. The dragon tendons were tanned by her and were as tough as a magic weapon. Even though she and Xiaoban pulled it like a tug of war, there was no damage at all. Building a raft is easy to say, but it is also difficult to actually do it. It took nearly a day and several people to build a raft that met the requirements. Shen Yizi put the raft into the water and tried it, but it didn't sink. She threw another rabbit onto the raft. The rabbit sat on a raft for the first time and huddled up in a ball, not daring to move. Shen Yizi threw a handful of grass to the edge of the raft. The rabbit couldn't resist the temptation and slowly jumped over. Its reflection was immediately reflected on the water. Under the gaze of several people, a fish as long as an arm appeared from the water and spit bubbles at the rabbit shadow on the water. At the bottom of the bubble, there are some fine sands that are as bright as water. This is the sand spit out by sharks. It's too beautiful. Shen Yizi and Kuiyu were both a little shocked. When the bubbles floated up and touched the water reflecting the shadow, the rabbit, who had been staying on the raft, suddenly weighed the raft and sank into the water, and the rabbit was gone. The raft resurfaced. Seeing this scene, several people felt a little heavy. This shark is really dangerous. Mentianyu even backed down. How about I stop going? I'll just wait here for you to come back. Although he longed to become a monk, he did not want to lose his life. The Shanai River is so wide. If something goes wrong in the middle, it will sink directly to the bottom and you will not be able to get up. Kuiyu gave him a look of contempt. Shen Yizi continued the experiment, this time placing a rabbit with an invisibility charm on the raft. After attaching the invisibility charm, the entire rabbit becomes invisible. Where is the shadow? Xiaoban exclaimed in surprise, the invisibility talisman, why didn't I think of that? But even if he thought about it, it would be useless. After all, the invisibility talisman is a second-level talisman. It is not that no one can draw it, but it requires a lot of spiritual energy to draw one. The external spiritual energy is thin, and it will be difficult to draw it after the spiritual energy is consumed. Makeup.